I'm glad you tuned in today. It looked like we were going to be snowed in, so I thought it would be a good time to tackle all the paper scraps that we have been generating the past few years. Just like quilters and sewists, paper crafters can accumulate a ton of scraps. Since I do all three hobbies, you can imagine the scrap load. Plus, my grandparents lived through the Depression, so somehow that got into my genetics, and I hate to throw things away that might still prove useful. Waste not, want not. Though some of these were mostly organized, and all were more or less rounded up in boxes and bags, it was time to get them sorted out so they would be handy and more likely to be used. I usually keep a bin on my work area to put scraps in, and regularly go through it to see if there is anything useful to my current project. But even those started piling up, and a new system was needed. We emptied every box, bag, envelope, or tote we could find of scraps. Sometimes a whole stamp set would show up, and lots of packaging. We found several loose, clear stamps too, so that's where they went. We even had photographs in there from a Christmas project. We even went through that bag of laces and trims that I used in the last video to divide between the sewing and the paper crafting. The next thing we did was to sort it all by color. I had very few bins for this, so I had to make some out of the bottom of paper bags. We combined some colors and had a bin for multicolored scraps as well as glitter paper. There are some papers I saw when I was sorting through that, frankly, I just hate. I can't stand the lemons with the blue leaves, for instance. They are blank on the other side, so I keep them because they can be used as a layer. When I'm absolutely sick of them, I'll put them in a giveaway pile. Does anyone else save packaging, I wonder? I can hardly throw away a good piece of chipboard, a glossy piece of blank cardstock, or an interesting shaped tag from clothing. Even the little stuff was sifted through for the random flower or leaf that might still be useful. The next step was to trim down the scraps that had gnarly edges and to sort further according to size. There were several card bases and cards that we had made, but had a mistake or an ink smudge on them. I took all the large papers and anything that was cut for a card but not folded and blank out of the mix, but I kept the blank folded card bases in here for handy card making. I separated all the die cuts too. The packaging came in handy to keep those nice and neat. The skinny strips are useful for sentiments. After that, I cut down some of the really long strips to make them useful for bookmarks or cards. We did this on each bin for each color. The glitter paper I was a little more lenient on cutting down, since you can use those odd-shaped bits for tiny snowflakes or punched hearts. So this took me all evening with the help of my daughter, and boy, my feet hurt from standing at the cutter that long. But it all looked very tidy for an evening's work. And after all that sorting and cutting, we didn't end up with a huge amount of trash. All the trash fit in one of those paper bag bins. But there must be something genetic about saving scraps. Even after I was done, my son was finding scraps under the table and going through the little bag of trash saying this could still be useful. The next afternoon, we declared a tea party, made scones, and set to work to see if we could get some Valentines out of all those scraps. We pulled in a few Valentine stamps, inks, and tools, and laid everything out buffet style on another table. Then we set to making cards. I will have a close-up photo of each card at the end of the video, and will be showcasing them on the blog. I like making collages for Valentine's Day. When I was a girl, my mother bought me a Victorian scrap Valentine kit from the Pleasant Company, now American Girl. It was part of Samantha's set of items. I had so much fun with that kit, and it has become a sort of tradition with me to do scrap and collage Valentines at least once for every Valentine's Day. It is really fun to take all those bits and pieces and just go at it with abandon, adding Victorian scrap to make a really lush picture. I tried translating that to a card with some of the die-cut pieces and a tag. I ended up making the tag something you could take out and stand up on a desk. I found a scrap that was already scored, so it gave me the idea. Vellum proved popular in our scrap cards, as well as some little silhouette die cuts I got from somewhere years ago. Embossing folders really transformed some of those scraps and made great dimension and texture on our cards. Sorry, I am not going to be able to identify much of the things we are using. There's things in here that were given to us, and some things that survived a big purge I did years ago. So those would be really old papers. And we are not above bringing home someone else's scraps from a garage sale. I do know that the dimensionals we're using are the Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. These were actually given to us, and they are at least 20 years old. They worked great. We go through so many dimensionals, so we were really glad to get these. The camera is flipped so you can see what Lillian is doing on her side better. She made 8 items to my 5 in an afternoon. The giant tape runner that I use was in one of those bins of craft stuff that were gifted to me, someone else's purge. As nice as it is to have the extra large rolls of adhesive, this does get tangled up sometimes. We really like plaid and gingham papers, and they can be useful for so many holidays. I love the cards Lillian has made with them today. Here comes the packaging. I kept a Yorkshire gold tea box because of the pretty painted scenery of the Yorkshire Dales behind all the writing. No strip of pretty is too small for me. It evolved into sort of a Jane Austen-themed collage tag, complete with some trim that perhaps she would have put on her ball gown. So we ended up with nearly a dozen cards, a bookmark, and some tags. The paper bag bins stack nicely, and we are going to keep these sorted by color so we can quickly find what we need when we need to make a card. By the time we can't stand them anymore, we will give them to the little ones to craft with, or else neatly bag them for donation. And now for the finished cards. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please visit sagebrushstampers.blogspot.com. We will see you next time.